Hey everybody, it's Emily Dark Schooling, and today I wanted to do a little homeschool check-in because we're 8 weeks into the year. Eight weeks in, I felt like that was a good time to just pop in and talk about how things are going. So I don't generally do a lot of these like homeschool update type videos because for the most part our year is pretty set. But since we're doing the Morbid Curiosities and we're doing different units, I thought it made sense to pop in periodically throughout the year and just share how things are going and let you guys know. Because I know a lot of people have been like really interested to hear more about Morbid Curiosities and how that's going. So we are currently, like I said, 8 weeks into the year, and we have done the complete cannibal unit study part of Morbid Curiosities. We finished that a couple of weeks ago, and now we are about 2 weeks into the death portion. So I thought I would give a little bit of a wrap up on how things went when it came to the cannibal section of the unit. Like, I wanted to kick the year off with this because this was the thing that kind of instigated Morbid Curiosities to begin with. Like, her little cannibalism joke and like her interest in that, and then finding a book that was so perfect for what I wanted to do. So we read Cannibalism: A Perfectly Natural History by Bill Shute, and The Indifferent Stars Above, The Harrowing Saga of the Donner Party, and this is by Daniel James Brown. These were like the base for the cannibalism unit, and I felt like it went really well. She had a good time with it, and I think she learned more than either of us expected, because, like, I mean, there's only so much you can do with cannibalism and still keep it age appropriate, because she is 15. So this is more based on, like, the science and history rather than, like, serial killers and that sort of thing. So this focuses on, like, cannibalism in the animal world and how our taboos in our society about cannibalism affected things like colonization and like the weird ways that we, as white people, I should say, like used cannibalism as a weapon, but also as like a weird like remedy of sorts for different things. So it has a lot of interesting stuff in here, some of which I had never heard before, so I felt like this was a really interesting book overall. And then we read, like I said, the Donner Party book, and I'd already read this. I love this book. This is one of my favorite pieces of nonfiction I've ever read, so I was really interested for her take on it. And she did not love this as much as me. She thought it was very slow. And I can see why she would think that. But even so, I feel like we both learned so much from this book. And like she's still talking about it a couple weeks after. So like I feel like that's a good sign. That's always a good sign when she has more to say weeks later, or when she brings it up in conversation. And then I had planned on 2 read-alouds, like 2 pieces of literature, but we only made it through 1 while we were doing the cannibalism unit, and that is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. This is not specifically about cannibalism, however, I felt like it fit. It made sense in my mind anyway, the theme where it's about people like kind of cannibalizing people's bodies for parts. And like the concept of unwinding is so awful. It feels almost as taboo as actual cannibalism. And she liked this quite a lot. Like, I knew she would like it, but I wasn't sure, because whenever I think Regina's gonna like a thing, she ends up not liking it. And so I really was hoping that this would go well, because I really want to read Scythe later in the year, and I felt like if this didn't go well, then we probably wouldn't get to Scythe, and I was worried about that. But she liked it. She gave this 4 stars. And I think this was a really fun read aloud to do with her, just because it is so morbid and dark and unsettling to read. And so she really enjoyed that. So that was it for our cannibalism unit. We are now entrenched in our death unit. And to be honest, this is the one that I was the most excited about, which is why I put it at the second unit, because like I really wanted to get to it. So what have we done for this section of our Morbid Curiosities unit? We are currently reading from 3 books at the moment. We're reading Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach. I had read this years ago and I remembered really enjoying it, but I didn't really remember details. But I thought this would fit well, and I was right. This is such a weird little book. If you are a morbid person like me, you would probably like it, because this is all about like what happens when a person donates their body to science. Like, what do they do with those cadavers? That's what this is. So like we're about, I would say, just about halfway. And so far we have read about like the history of human like cadaver research and like how it started and how it's done today. And we've talked about like body snatching and that kind of thing. We've talked about the body farm, which is the thing that I remembered the most distinctly from this book, is the body farm section of the book, because there is it's called the body farm, and I think it's in Tennessee, and it's at a college, and they literally leave bodies outside to rot, to learn more about how bodies decay and like try to understand that, so that when a body is found, like by police or something, and it's been murdered and it's been out in the sun for a while and starting to decay, they can like figure out how long specifically it's been there and like learn based on that, like what has happened, like what state of decay are they at, and that kind of thing. So it's really super gross. And that's the thing that I remembered the most from this book. Learning about human decay and like what that looks like. We've talked about how like they use cadavers for testing things like car crashes and that sort of thing. Airplanes, like how like they have people who come and look at the aftermath of a crash site and determine based on the bodies that are found what happened to the plane, that kind of thing. So really, really weird and interesting. It's not for everybody, but we're having a good time reading this together. And then we're also reading From Here to Eternity, Traveling the World to Find the Good Death by Caitlin Doughty. We are about almost halfway, I would say, just about halfway, and really enjoying this. We're listening to the audiobook for this one because Caitlin Doughty reads it, and I don't know, whenever an author reads their own book, specifically if they're a person who has a good narrative voice, and Caitlin Doughty does, I try to listen to them read it to me. So I've had this audiobook waiting for me for ages, so I'm very excited that we're reading this together. This is all about like how different cultures view death and what they do, like the grieving process. What does that look like in different cultures? Like the funeral itself, like how different cultures treat the dead, essentially. So really, really interesting. I think this is going to be a 5-star for both of us, but for me, for sure. I don't know. We'll see what Regina thinks when we're done. And then we're also reading All the Living and the Dead by Haley Campbell. So this is similar in tone to From Here to Eternity, and that it's kind of written in a memoir-ish style. And but it's also really similar in tone to Stiff. So it goes really well with both. This is about different people who work with death, people who work in that industry, and like the different ways people can like be involved in that process, from like funeral directors to people who work in a crematorium to people who study dead bodies for an anatomical research. And so it's really interesting, and her writing style is really fun and a little bit quirky. And we're listening to this on audio too, because I just can only read so many things aloud in a day. So we're listening to this on audio, and we kind of bounce back, like we do Stiff almost every day, and we bounce back and forth between these two. because these are more focused on like cultural attitudes and like, I think of them more as a social studies type of thing, whereas this feels a little more scientific. And then we just finished up our first read aloud for the death unit, and that was Hamlet. This is one of the No Fear Shakespeare graphic novels. So we read this, and we are currently slowly watching the Kenneth Branagh Hamlet, because I was like, okay, which version of Hamlet would be like the most accurate to the story itself? And like, I don't know that you can get more accurate than what Kenneth Branagh does with that movie. Like, it's 4 hours long. So we're very slowly watching it. I remember too, we watched it when I was in high school, my senior year, when we studied Hamlet. Our English teacher played that movie for us slowly over the course of like, I don't know, a week or two maybe, and we just like dissected it. So we're not quite dissecting it, but we are slowly watching it and comparing like what is different in that compared to this, because they do feel very different tonally. Like, for example, this doesn't really go into a lot of detail about the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia. It's there, but it's more like, we just know that they maybe have some affection for each other. But the movie really shows that, okay, they have a serious relationship. Like, there's things happening. Like, Regina wasn't expecting that. She was like, wait a minute. So I think that changes the tone too. It makes what Ophelia goes through over the course of the play make a lot more sense. So she gave Hamlet 5 stars. I think she's very into Shakespeare's tragedies. I'm still hoping I can convince her to do a comedy next year, because I really want to do Taming of the Shrew. If we can only do one comedy, I would like to get through Taming of the Shrew, simply because I want to show her 10 Things I Hate About You, which is one of my favorite 90s movies. And it goes so well. So like, we'll see what happens. But right now, I feel pretty good that she is being exposed to Shakespeare in a way that works for her, that makes sense to her, that she really loves. Like, she's thoroughly enjoyed all 3 of the Shakespeare plays that we've read together. So I'm pleased with that. If we don't even do another one, if we stopped here, I think I would feel good that she has like been exposed to some good Shakespeare stuff and has appreciated it for what it is. So what other things have we gotten through? I would say some wins for us. Like, so far, Morbid Curiosities has been a strong win. That's been going super well. Denison Geometry, 100% a win. I am so glad we found this curriculum. I feel like we needed this sooner. Like, I wish it existed when my older 3 were in school, because they would have all benefited so much from Denison math, from his algebra program and stuff. Like, I think they would have all come away with less stress. Like, that's the thing I love about it, is it is a stress-free math curriculum. So if you have a kid who is dealing with a lot of math phobia, math stress, they don't think they're good at math, it makes them feel dumb, or they feel just like a lot of anxiety around it, Denison Algebra will definitely benefit them. I think it's got a strong growth mindset. It makes them less fearful of math. And we are doing the success version this year, the success geometry. Last year we did the regular algebra, and it went well, but she still took a long time to get through a lesson, and it wasn't stressful. It wasn't as stressful as other things we've done, but it was definitely still a lot for her. This year we're doing the success geometry, which is like a slimmed down version of the geometry, and it's going so much better. Like, I feel like she's actually fully getting it and getting A's in her math for the first time. Like, last year she got a solid B, and she did well, but this year I think it's going even better. So I'm going to do the success version going forward when we get to Algebra 2. And I think that'll be a much better fit for her. So that's going super well. Love Denison Algebra. Cannot say enough good things about it. I think also her classes that we're doing, her online classes, are going really well. She's not as stressed out about them as I thought she might be, because she says she doesn't like doing online classes that much because she feels like it can be a lot. And I understand that, but I cannot teach a foreign language. So I was like, that is your only option. And since she wanted Korean, like, we had to. So she is doing that class, and she's also doing the visual biology. Both of them are going really well. The Korean is a lot more intense. It's twice a week, and she has homework for each class. So she's doing Korean every day, essentially, because she does a class and then the homework on the next day and then the class and then the homework on the next day. So she's like at least 4 days a week is doing Korean, and she's doing well with that. And she's also once a week doing the visual biology, and she's enjoying that. So it's going really well. I feel like our school year is off to a super good start this year. I'm feeling very good about everything that we're doing. The only thing I have dropped is writing with skill. And I knew it was going to happen. Like, I was very uncertain if this was the thing for us to use, because she has a lot of writing issues, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be a good fit. I wanted something that was just an easy, let's just get it done kind of a situation. And it is that, but it's also very intense. And she was just struggling through it. So I have set that aside. And I was going back and forth over what we were going to use instead, because I really need her to be able to write a coherent paper. She has a lot to say. She just can't always get those words out of her head and onto paper or onto a keyboard, whatever. Like, it's a struggle. So I just heard Ashley at this House of Walls talking about layers of learning writer's workshop. And I had looked at this before and just kind of went, maybe it's not right for us. It looks like more of a family program. And so I dismissed it. But I went back and looked at it today, because you can buy the whole thing, which is, I don't know how many units, like 6 or 7 units of material, or you can buy individual units. And I went ahead and bought their sentences, paragraphs, and narration unit to give it a test run and see what we think. Because that's really where we need to focus right now is sentences and paragraphs. Like, if I can get her to write a good sentence and then string several good sentences together into a paragraph, I think will be golden if I can get that to happen. So that is where we're going to focus. So that is, I think, what we'll be doing for the next term going forward. I don't know if I'm going to call it a term. The next 8 weeks, I think, we should get us through that, or maybe 10 weeks tops, and then we'll see if I'm going to go ahead and buy more units from them, or if I feel like that gets us to where we need to be, that we can kind of freeform it, because that's really where I feel more comfortable, is just sort of coming up with fun assignments to go along with what we're doing. We did that, but I've been doing more short story type things, because she's more comfortable writing short stories with dialogue and that sort of thing, as opposed to writing an academic paper. So anyway, all that to say, that's where we're at currently. What are we doing going forward? Our next read aloud is going to be A Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. This is the second death book in the Discworld series. I've read Mort a couple of times, so I really did not want to do Mort again. So I decided, since these can kind of stand alone, even though it is a series, I wanted to move on to the next book. And so we're going to be reading this. I haven't decided yet. I might get the audio, because I know most of the Discworld books are full cast audio, and I think that'll be so much more fun than me doing it, but we'll see. So this is our next read aloud, and we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping she likes it. She's never done Discworld before, but she did love The Hitchhiker's Guide, which I feel tonally is similar. So I think if she liked The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, she should like Discworld. Our health and civics currently are going really well. We're still reading Where to Start. This is a survivor's guide to anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges. This is kind of like a crash course in mental health and like different kinds of mental health challenges you can have. We've read quite a bit of this, and it's really interesting, and I think it covers a lot of ground without going too into detail. And I've paired that with Don't Call Me Crazy, 33 Voices, Start the Conversation About Mental Health. So we kind of like read about something like depression, and then we'll read a little story or essay about somebody who has had that challenge in their life. So like we've read about like eating disorders and that sort of thing. So these kind of go together really well. And we'll do that for the next term, and then we're going to switch over to ADHD is Awesome for our mental health section. And for civics, we are currently reading Represent. This is The Unfinished Fight for the Vote by Michael Eric Dyson and Mark Favreau. And this is covering like the history of how people have gotten the right to vote throughout all of American history. So it starts out with like, at first, only white men who owned property could vote, and then the white men who didn't own property started to fight for their suffrage, so they were given the right to vote. And then, you know, the abolition movement and how black men specifically, were able to get the right to vote. And so now we're up to women's suffrage. So we're just reading a couple chapters a week, and that's going really well. I'm liking this a lot. This is a really solid U.S. civics for, I would say, upper middle grade through high school. I mean, Regina's 15, and I think we're getting a lot out of it, but I think like a 12 to 16-year-old would enjoy this. Okay, so that is where we're at. That is how our 10th grade year is going thus far. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the comments how your homeschool year is going. What is a highlight for you this year? I'd love to hear about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye!